Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 12th of May. We'll scroll through the numbers. Hope everyone has had a wonderful little Mother's Day holiday this weekend and remember to do something special. S&P, a lot of mixed sells, some new buys. And it's not surprising. I mean, we ended up with some weakness. It got bought up. It's right in line with what we were thinking. I know I hear a lot of people with the gloom and doom scenarios, this, that, and the other, and it just isn't panning out at this particular point. Though there isn't a whole lot of impetus to go the other direction either, because there's just nothing special happening. And so if we look at our daily setup here, we had the nice improvement for the steel moving above at this particular point, and we also had a little bit of weakness from the cyan. It moved lower, so a little bit of short weakness, a little bit of strength there. Hadn't quite had the crossover of the red above white. We did get that, but at the same time, you had a rise of the cyan at this point higher than the previous little peak right there. Though you still had steel rising, and now the steel is going to be making a higher peak than the previous. Now, combine that with the fact that we've got this wonderful little candle here, which we know that we look for those. Now, the last one was our first loss of the year on all of these that have produced pretty decent gains. So it's projecting a Monday higher move. I'm not going to argue with it because, again, when we go back through the history of that, that is pretty impressive. You do have the right components. Everything's on the right side. Is it fantastic? No. Would it have been better if the green had moved above into the new zone? Yeah. So if we get weakness to start with, we take advantage of any buy signals that come along, and opportunity is easy with that. You can do it from SPY calls. That will work as well, or you can actually do the shares. It just depends on what your preference is with that setup. In Q, you can see the improvement there as well, except for green going the wrong direction again. The flat plateau of the red usually is pretty decent because what that does is when you do get the spike, it will be above this last peak here. You'll be looking then at this one over here for it to move across, but it could potentially be a nice move. It's still coming off of our yellow buy candle. We're pretty much right at the exact same level. What was the close of that bar? There we go. 35.51. So you're within 3 points of it on the NASDAQ. So that's a potential turnaround. You've had a nice little move across. We were a little earlier with the improvement from the Dow, the YM, in the futures, and it also put in a fractal buy the other day with an upside target of 16,675, which would be new highs. So looking for that there. Nice move of the red above the white, green just a fraction below, trailing it just behind, but rising from the steel, also is making a higher peak, and you also are getting lower peaks. So lower peaks, higher highs, and in this case, higher peaks for the bull side, higher price. Not bad from that standpoint. USO still looking kind of weak with that, but it's at that trumpet point of here about to cross over, so that becomes critical for the upside momentum for the market. So that's interesting to see at that point that it's at a spot that it can make that transition. Likewise, you had to pivot up here of steel, but still right at a crossroads. It's still pretty big separation and not really an exciting move for gold at that particular point, though. Wouldn't take much to move it to the upside. Bias still above the red line, though. We'll have to see where it opens up. That would also give us an earlier clue on what to expect from the overall market. And again, here we have X was right at that delineation point we were looking at, potentially for the lows to sell some new medium puts for the following time period coming up, because now you've retested your lows, you're on a higher extreme. Got to see the green move above and start to get closer to matching a green. I look for, and make it a little easier to digest here, is looking for the green to move up towards the -7.5 with the cyan moving down to that point. Usually an indication that you're going to get a crossover at that particular level. So back over here, kind of what we were looking at. Not seeing that kind of momentum yet from it. So should be some a little bit more expressed weakness there. CLF likewise, from this back here at the peak, no shock with that turn, and there's nothing surprising about that one exactly. So that was right on tap, and it did finish above that 17 strike, which we were looking at for the low setup there. Would I wait for a turnaround to do the next setup? Yeah, and you'll see that whether or not you get an improvement in the extreme histogram. And then obviously if we look at intraday, we'd be able to see it clear in intraday. You see you're still in that deep red, but it's gotten very oversold at that particular point, so you would be thinking it's time to start seeing a little bit of a turnaround there. AIG, likewise, we had seen it in the safety zone. Some people told me, no, this is going way back below. Yeah, that didn't happen, did it? Bounced right back off the pivot. It was interesting. It had the lower steel, but once the last set of steel got above that pivot right there, boom, it took off and moved right back above it. Though you need to see the continuation. You need to see the green get above, and then also red improve over white. And, just 1, 2, 3, 4, just as I typically describe it with looking at that. We talked about this where WLT had tapped out on the matching lows off of higher stream, and also an improvement in its overall red, and then it finally crossed over into a new zone. Unfortunately, you got the same separation as you had before, which mirrored right about over here. So is that likely to fade? And yeah, unless you get a return back as now. You do have lower peak here. It's interesting because it's coming off of the divergence above the 13.5. So the next peak will be quite interesting to see if it creates that upside divergence, in which case could carry WLT. So be watching for that one, more intraday setups, because you've got nice momentum with the red here. If it breaks into the new zone before pivoting lower, could have some carry through. So be interesting to watch how that works out. And we can see that the alongside we had the nice setup as it came here. It negated the deep red as it moved across. It was a nice carry through. So it's improved quite a bit. Obviously the long took it 1871 from that setup. Still pretty close by to it. You moved into a new zone. For this one, now you're going to have to break into the higher zone and actually see that cyan move below the red, and that would give the indication you're going to get a nice trend. Now, nice to have this along with that cyan candle from a daily, suggesting that you should have a higher close going forward. So all those ducks are in a row. See how that one plays out. Let's take a look at the alert stocks while we're at it here. Apple, incredible with that deep steel drop. You did end up with the green below the cyan, but overall that should turn around for upside. I mean, you get the positive extremes, a little bit of a retrace. Not exactly horrible. Looking at Amazon here, made new lows, did come back off of that setup intraday. It was fun to watch, very close to reaching a dip below the red line here. I think Monday is going to be critical, and obviously a positive day for Monday could help lift quite a few of these that are in the doldrums as far as some of the readings get out of them. Okay, flipping to Google. As such, though, those readings, you can see it was still clearly within there. Google turned around off its move. Came back, put in an old positive pivot. Now, it's interesting with this one because the steel has stayed above the cyan throughout this entire dip, even though we saw that breakdown there. It's come back lower, made the new lows, fine. This pivot to me was the interesting one right after here where it came pivoted up near lower close. You just didn't see any support with the green. Unfortunately, that just didn't promote a huge improvement there, but you did get the sideways move of the red, and that's usually the precursor to some type of lift. And whether it's sustainable or not, it's got a good opportunity because you're making a higher pivot on the green comparatively, but you would have to see steel continue to shoot up to the upside, and that's going to be hard to do at this particular point. So still not a terrific setup, though. You're likely to just get this oversold bounce that comes through. All in all, not bad. You can still, obviously the 15-minute called it very easily. Netflix coming off its buy setup right at that particular point was sort of the de facto buy where the green crosses, even though the red's failing. That's why it didn't produce a whole lot of anything. The nice pivot up, though, with the steel was also helped. But the problem it's going to have is it'll be interesting here because, too, likewise, this makes a lower pivot like that WLT. You ended up with 3 lower, the potential for a divergence to the upside with the move, and particularly if you can get green to cooperate with a spike up on Monday, and that could have some follow through for Netflix. PCLN coming off its deep red, nice little pivot there. I know it seems like a lot of points on the move, but it's still not looking particularly pretty at this particular point. There's no suggestion that's going to cross over. I do like, however, though, when you get this crossover and then you start feeling, and when the green stays above, you can ride a pivot to the upside with that green, because what it hasn't done is crossed below, negating the overall move like you had back over here where it would start, but then it would cross back below, and then it would take another emerging move back above to give it. But this is always usually pretty good. It means that there's been buying going on in between all of the remaining selling that's taking place, because you're not getting a complete collapse underneath. Tesla, no, that's ugly still. Let's go to Twitter. They keep arguing that the bottom is in place on this one. You had a slight improvement, and actually get the steel a little bit above. You didn't get much shorts believing it, because they really haven't done much to cover and see that move. Perhaps Monday that starts the change if it's a real positive day, but still a little bit tepid, so I'd stick with what you see on those intraday readings coming from the alert charts there. Baidu, trying to make a turn with just the steel on this, but would have been nice to have had it closed above that previous peak, which, let's get a reading. That previous peak was 1.75, and you're at 0.19. It's going to have to get over it before it pivots lower again. Otherwise, you'll end up with 3 lower pivots, and that would not be good at this particular point, especially when you're at a bottom, because that would be ugly. FAS has been doing fine with its curve, but unfortunately split to the upside here. It doesn't bode well, which would be interesting to see. FAS moving lower on an up day for the market. No, that's going to have to stay divergent for the market to improve on those readings. Facebook, no. You had the nice improvement here. Certainly shorts rising into it, but green fading off there. The only hope you've got there is that plateau of the red, and the last time it did that too, you would just need to see a pivot up in the morning, and that could have some carry through. So again, not great from a short standpoint, a little bit more long setups developing here, which is interesting to see. We're fine with that. No objection to it whatsoever. Let's take a look at intraday real quick that took place on Friday. All right, looking at the intraday chart, it got kind of choppy. Rolled out through here, and the nice little pivot for sell signal came along. Then it gave you the deep red indication that it was going to dip further. It did, but made a nice higher peak right at this particular point, and then started to take off. And you never had the steel dip below to confirm a continuation of the decline until you ended up over here, in which case you ended up with a nice little DOC setup right there. All of the items met. Steel crossed below on the next bar, broke down, and it ran with it for a nice decline. Ended up with a nice pivot right after the red, which negated it pretty much after that initial bar, and then it went green with the buy signal, and then it just continued to follow through. And that was a nice spike from the red white, which made it really easy to go with, because you never ended up with any dip going back through it. Had a little bit of a cross pivot right there, but you didn't get steel dipping below the cyan at all. Carried all the way through to the peak, and then you had a rollover. I kind of like it when I look at that steel that breaks down, and we talked about this one on the Skype chat. Broke down completely right there. Also had a green pivot lower. Then it was just a matter of waiting for, am I going to get a continuation? And sure enough, it continued. Made it easy to stay with it, and then boom, the cyan dipped and continued its dip all the way across. Got down here to the oversold and made a dramatic turn pretty fast. It was right here. The steel shot up quickly, as so did the green, and that momentum carried through, negating the deep red pretty fast. And then it finished up all the way at those highs. So that was the intraday look at it. All in all, some pretty good stuff. It's been a really nice week. Continuing a lot of the programming with these zones. It adds a lot more complexity to it, but I think it's going to be really nice to have that kind of ability to separate in between and see the power of each of the different areas. Like tend to see more weakness come out of the death zone, which is where this one crossed, but had the early positives even before it got the crossover there in the death zone, particularly if you see the green crossed above the red below the death zone where the red moved above the white, which is interesting because the red did move above the white and you had a little bit of weakness right at that particular spot. So it does have an impact. Just a matter of being able to follow through with the 1-2 and setting the appropriate stops and allowing yourself to continue to really read the market very easily. So it's been quite nice. As always, though, we will talk again tomorrow. Trade well.